Well, good Monday morning to you. Welcome to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. I'm your host, Jim Tabor, along with Drs. Jim and Janine Fox of Doctor's Nutrition, located on Callan-Lorraine Road in Gulfport, just south of Pass Road. And we do this every Monday morning. It is a live call-in show in which we talk about a particular topic, and we invite you to call in and ask any questions regarding that topic, or if you had something else in mind that you wanted to ask health-wise, because that's what the show is all about, helping you live a healthier lifestyle. Our phone lines are 896-0713 or 800-349-0713, so you call in with your question and pass the question along to our producer, and they will pass it along to us. Well, November is National Diabetes Month. And diabetes is a chronic disease that occurs either when the pancreas does not produce enough insulin, or when the body cannot effectively use the insulin that it produces. So we're going to be talking about that this morning. First off, there are like three different types of diabetes. There's like pre-diabetes, diabetes type 1, and type 2. So what's the difference between the three?
Well, I think the diabetes type 1, and they used to, many years ago, they called it juvenile diabetes, simply because most of the time it was juveniles or young people who had it. And it's usually some sort of an autoimmune type reaction, virus or something gets in there, gets into the pancreas and actually destroys some of the islets which make the insulin. Actually, we're seeing type 1 now later on in later adults simply because of overuse. Pancreas just gets where it can't respond. We burn it out, so to speak. That's type 1, so you just don't have enough insulin, don't produce enough insulin.
Pretty much pancreatic failure.
Pancreatic failure, right.
With insulin, so it does not produce insulin.
Right. Now, type 2 diabetes starts with something called insulin resistance. In other words, your body's making insulin, you're producing it, but your body is resistant to using it. It's not being able to get the actual sugar into the cells and triglycerides so that they can be used for fuel. And when they don't, and of course the sugar builds up, and that gets toward the insulin, you make more and more and more insulin, and typically along with that more and more weight gain, and so on and so forth. But those are the problems with it. So type 2 is actually an insulin resistant problem in its final stages.
Right, and the pre-diabetes you asked, pre-diabetes is basically insulin resistance, but more severe. You have insulin resistance, then you get a little bit more severe, it's pre-diabetes. Then when it's severe, it's diabetes. So diabetes type 2 is a severe insulin resistance.
Exactly.
And a pre-diabetes is when it's starting. So the pre-diabetes is, and it is very much widespread, because we do lab work, of course, a lot, and almost, majority of the people that we talk to actually have pre-diabetes or diabetes. And a real high majority are insulin resistant. So it is very common.
We see insulin resistance probably show up first. We'll see people come in and their triglycerides are, let's just say, and some of the researchers are saying somewhere around 60 to 80 is optimal. 60 is optimal. Don't see a lot of that. But we see 80 or above, you're starting to show the early signs of insulin resistance. Now, those early signs of insulin resistance, if left alone, become more conversed in insulin resistance, and the higher they go, the higher. And we see people all the time, their triglycerides are 145 and the top end of the range is 149. Oh, you're fine, it's 145. No, you're actually showing the early signs of insulin resistance, and something needs to be done now. Get it started early and you can prevent the pre-diabetes and so on and so forth.
Well, are there any early signs?
Well, the early signs, you really do see a lot of them on lab work. Now, a lot of times, one of the things early that you will see is weight gain. So that is one of the symptoms.
Especially in the midsection.
Exactly, gaining weight in the middle. And that is a sign that it's coming.
Yep.
Now, on lab work, what we look for, like he just talked about, triglycerides. Triglycerides are so important. And, really, if they're over about 80, you're probably starting. If they're over 100, it's probably really already there.
Yeah, you're there.
And then when you get extreme, which we see a lot of, you are really close to being diabetic.
Yeah.
And it is a real big, that's one reason you have such a big increase in heart disease when it comes to diabetes. Now, other things on the lab work that we look for is fasting sugar, even if your A1C is normal. Now, if the A1C starts elevating, then yeah, you definitely, that's kind of the gauge on whether you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, is a hemoglobin A1C. And a hemoglobin A1C tells your 3-month blood sugar average. So it's not just that 1 minute of that one day.
Right.
But I've seen people with totally normal A1Cs and their fasting sugar is elevated. So the fasting sugar is elevated, we start seeing the fasting insulin elevated. We start seeing triglycerides elevated. And then you start seeing fatty liver, which fatty liver goes along with insulin resistance. And that is all part of the whole cascade that ends up at diabetes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can someone early on do about it?
Probably the
biggest thing probably change their lifestyle.
I was going to
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
diet and lifestyle is the biggest thing you can do. The standard American diet, and we've said it 1,000 times before, it is SAD or SAD, and it really is, because the manufacturers, especially the processed foods that you get, the packaged processed foods are the absolute worst, because they take out all. We went through this low-fat craze, started back in the 70s. Ansel Keys kind of kicked it off. Some terrible research, but anyhow, he did, and that's what caused the problem. And it started the low-fat craze. So everybody said, and if you take any food, I don't care what food it is, take out the fat, and it tastes pretty much like cardboard. So the manufacturers did what anybody probably would think they would do. They want to make it taste better, even though it's low-fat, so they put in sugar.
Yep.
And here we go. And since you can look at it, the data from the 70s till today, you can see the increased rise. I mean, the arrow just goes straight up as far as the increase of insulin resistance, diabetes, complications, blah, 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 healthcare costs, you name it. It's all right there. Started in like 74, I think it was, and right on up to today. So diet is the big thing. We don't need starch in our diet whatsoever. The rice, the potatoes, I mean, they're just not needed in our diet. We don't need them. You get, if you eat your meats for your proteins, fish, chicken, turkey, beef, pork, whatever. And then if you get your vegetables, which have got more complex carbohydrates, I know it's like broccoli, and broccoli's not my favorite vegetable, but I do it occasionally.
You have. You've been
I've been doing it
lately.
more. I mean,
And Janine's laughing because before we went on, I told her that I had fixed honey chicken with rice yesterday.
And I told him he didn't need the rice.
don't eat the rice. There's not anywhere in the realm of science that shows that we need any kind of those starches in our diet. We just don't need them.
So let me ask you this: what's the difference between white rice and brown rice?
Well,
besides the color.
Basically, the brown has a little bit more fiber because
Yeah.
they haven't stripped it down as much.
Yeah.
Anything of the real white, it actually they strip it down and they take all the fiber out of it to make it cook quicker, to make it fluffier, all that good stuff.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. We're talking about diabetes this morning. Have any questions? Give us a call. Well, it's 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. It's 10 minutes after 9 o'clock, and welcome back. It's our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show, and our phone lines are open at 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. Talking about diabetes this morning. So you have an issue with it. Maybe it's just something early on. What can you do about it? Do you have a question or you know somebody who does? Please pick up the phone and give us a call. We've already talked about the different kinds of lifestyles that promote diabetes, which is not healthy.
Well, yeah, lack of activity. There are some genetics, no doubt about that.
And that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Psychic too.
We've done this for 9 years.
Right,
like we
right.
read each other's minds. I've learned so much about the different supplements that they have.
Yeah.
But is it like genetics? I mean, is it kind of?
Well, genetics plays a role
Yeah.
in it. It makes you predisposed to
Right.
it. That's the key. And if you, for instance, if you have a sibling or other people in your family that have diabetes or have developed diabetes, then yeah, you're a little bit more predisposed simply because of your genetics. Doesn't mean you're going to get it.
Right, but you shouldn't also wait until you do.
Right.
We always tell people you want to start early. If you know it's in your family and you know half of everybody in your family has it, start early. Because I do see people that everybody in their family is diabetic and they're not, but that's because they did something different. And those differences that you can do. Exercise does help insulin resistance. So they have shown that exercise helps, and changing the diet. And, really, if you did nothing but go to a real food diet, where if it is packaged and processed, you don't eat it. Go to real foods. That actually helps. Now, like I said, it's better off not doing a lot of the starches, even if it's a real food.
Right.
But if you get away from the packaged processed food, because that is what everybody does, and convenience. And yes, it's easier, and but you're going to pay for it down the road.
I have a lot of people ask me, because Janine and I are always talking about eat a real food diet.
Yep.
I say, well, what's real food? Okay, let's take an orange. Go to the grocery store, pick up an orange. Does it have a label? Turn it all around, look. Does it have a label on it anywhere telling you what it is? No, the sign might say orange is 59 cents or something, but it's an orange. So it's not processed. Now,
And the little sticky thing on there with the barcode does not count.
No, that
does
don't
not,
count.
the barcode does not count, okay? Now, take your orange, go over and get you some orange juice. Pick up the bottle, turn it on its side, and there's the facts,
Right.
the ingredients and so on in there. And it'll tell you how much orange juice it has, how much sugar it has, blah, blah, blah. That is a processed orange.
Right, it's processed.
Now, you can process food yourself by cooking.
Right.
Okay, she cooks a lot, so okay, that's processing, but it's done appropriately.
Totally different.
Totally different.
It's totally different when you take something and you cook it yourself, and you cook it at the right temperature, the right way, and everything else. That does make a difference. So people have just got to start cooking again. I mean, people think it's weird when you cook. People have walked in my house, and I have a really nice kitchen.
Yeah, she does.
And
It's
they
like my
will
dream
say,
kitchen.
"Oh, do you cook?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I cook." I mean, how
Well,
can you not cook?
We like to eat, so yes, you
Yes,
cook.
yes, I cook. I cook a lot, actually, and I make a lot
I
of
keep
stuff.
trying to get them to adopt me, but I mean,
And I make
because
a lot,
I love to cook
I do
too.
make a lot from scratch, but
Everything, pretty much.
because you have to. I mean, if you buy processed ingredients to make what you're cooking, again, you're still eating processed food.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what you got to do. It takes a little bit extra time, but you can prep like I do and do it kind of on the weekends, prep for the week.
and it may
that
cost
way
you a
it
little
may-
bit more.
Yes, but it's worth, actually,
but
it
the-
does,
Probably not.
in the long run, it does not cost more to cook. When
no.
you start looking at how much the restaurants are nowadays,
Oh, I
and
know.
how much even the fast food restaurants are, people used to say, "Oh, but I can go eat cheaper." And yeah, when there was a $1 menu, yeah, they were probably right. Now you can't. You really can't. I mean, you look at the prices of fast food, you look at the restaurant food. You can eat organic, complete organic,
Cheaper.
for cheaper than some of the fast food restaurants. So
Yeah.
I've looked at it. I've compared it, because when people tell me that, I tell them that is not true.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I usually
Now,
get vegetables or
food
something from the
food
grocery
itself
store,
is expensive.
I head to the organic section.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
And get as much of that as I can.
And
Right.
food has gotten expensive, and I understand
doubt.
some people out there might not have as much money to buy food. Eat less of it. I always say, buy good food, eat less of it. Most people eat too much.
That's one
That's
of the.
another part of the problem.
I was going to say that's a huge part of the problem, actually. When you think about how much food we typically eat, go to a restaurant and they bring out this massive plate of food, and if you really want to get scared, go to watch the buffets. The multiple trips, and food's just piled up.
Yeah.
It's
There was
like-
a comedian, John Panette, that used to do the thing about eating at the buffets, the
Yeah.
Chinese buffets.
I mean, we'll cook sometimes a 6-8 ounce steak, and we split it.
yeah.
And so people look at us and that's all you're going to eat. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
For one, he is a perfect example of would-be diabetic if he didn't watch what he did. He is not diabetic. His A1C is perfect, but yet when he was in his 40s, he's in his 70s now, was a long time ago, 30
Long
years
time ago, yeah.
He did have the extreme triglycerides. He
did.
did have all that. And with me cooking and changing what he eats, his triglycerides now are down to below 100.
Oh, they were 60-something.
60 something last time. So you can actually, and they used to be 700.
Yeah,
so
they were
there's
over
you can
700.
you
I'm
can
due,
change.
and I'm due for a checkup to see how mine
and,
are.
Yeah.
and his genetics are terrible
Yeah.
on that end. So you can change it, but it isn't something you can change and do it for 6 months and then go back to what you were doing. Because people say all the time, "Oh, well, now it's better. Can I go back?" I said, no. If you go back, your genetics are still the same. You have to stay with what you're doing to keep the results.
Very much.
Because you're still going to get, the problem if you go back to what you were doing. So you can change. You can't change your genetics. You can change your epigenetics, which the epigenetics are what you do. And so
Y'all have a great diet there at the store. That's a low glycemic diet.
it's a
The low glycemic
low
diet, yeah.
glycemic. It's basically about controlling the sugar and the insulin response.
And it's really good food. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah,
really
there's a
good.
lot of really good food on that diet. You know, and a lot of people say, oh, you know, it's one sheet, so it's not a book, but you know, it's got things on both sides, good and bad. And when they look at the good stuff and they go through it, they say, well, gee, there's a lot of really good food there.
We tried
well,
to do
really
something
is.
simple that people could follow.
Yeah.
Because we want somebody to do it and keep doing it. It ain't a diet, it's a lifestyle change.
Right.
So that's why we did just a one sheet, simple. Yes, you could be stricter, but yet people wouldn't do it. So we did as simple as we could. And if people follow it, I have people that come in, their A1C is 12, which if you're diabetic, you know how high that is. And if they follow that diet in 3 months, I have seen people get it down to normal.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, it's 17 minutes after 9 o'clock. Our phone number is 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. We are going to be back with our final segment in just a moment and have this week's special for you. And welcome back. It's our final segment of this morning's show. We're talking about diabetes this morning. 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. Our phone lines are open to you. What kind of supplements can help?
Well, probably, yeah, if you, our specialist this week.
Well, let's go ahead
is
with
probably,
the special. Yeah,
I was going to say, this is probably the best thing you can start with. It's something called GSF, or glucose support formula. Just too many words, right? But GSF has things in it like chromium, which is an extraordinarily good mineral for diabetes, or even helping you with blood sugar. Things like vanadyl sulfate, which we don't get enough of in the diet. And then it has some other things in it.
Yeah, it's got the Gymnema sylvester, it's got a bitter melon, it has alpha lipoic acid, it has, you know, it has a lot of
cinnamon.
Yeah, cinnamon extract.
It's a water soluble cinnamon
Yes.
extract, because people tell me, oh, well, I eat cinnamon all the time. Do you eat it every day? No.
Right.
There I go.
And when I
And
say
French toast will count.
And French
No.
toast does not
Yeah.
count.
And when I say
Okay.
extract, it is the active ingredient from cinnamon. So even though it's a smaller amount of cinnamon, it's way higher strength because of the active ingredient.
Right, it's the water
So it
soluble
is definitely put together for glucose control. And it does help some with weight loss, just like with other people. I mean, people, if you control your sugar and insulin, you can help control your weight. So that kind of goes together.
Yep.
Other products that we have, another one that we sell a lot of is our berberine max.
Oh, yeah.
And the berberine max is just that berberine. And it has some other, it has a little alpha lipoic acid with it. It has some other extracts of antioxidants with it. So it's a really good berberine. But berberine, they've done some double-blind studies, where double-blind studies are when you take groups of people that don't know what they're taking, and you have a group that takes nothing, and then a group that takes, you know, what you're giving them. But it actually, this study showed more groups, where one group got metformin, which is your very common diabetic medication. One group got Avandia, one group got berberine, and the other group got nothing. So it was a really good study, and it showed that berberine worked as well as the drugs for controlling blood sugar. But berberine actually helped your lipids better than the other classes. So that's actually really good. And so it's one that you can actually do, and when you start having problems, don't wait for you to be diabetic. You can actually start taking berberine to help with that blood sugar control.
Right.
Question from a viewer: is dark chocolate better than milk chocolate?
Yes, it
No
is.
doubt about it.
No doubt, because it's less sugar. Although some people don't do dark enough.
They've got some great dark chocolate in the store. They really do.
If dark chocolate's not got just a little bit of a bitter taste to it,
Right.
it's not dark
It's not
enough.
dark enough, exactly. So you want to go as dark as you can tolerate, because
Right.
it's less sugar in it. Milk
Right.
chocolate is mostly sugar. It is very little chocolate.
Yep,
Yep.
pretty much.
896-0713 or 800-349-0713. Do y'all accept blood work from the doctor, or do you do your own blood work? Both?
Yes.
Well, both. Yeah,
do both. Yeah.
We have many people that bring their own lab work in, and we can see what was done. A lot of people have not had enough lab work, and so we do panels that are much bigger than what is typically done, because what's done at your doctor's office has to be what insurance covers.
Right.
And we don't deal with insurance. We do it as cheap as we can, and we don't have to worry about what's covered. So we do panels that check a lot more information, not just.
Very thorough.
Well, for
Right.
instance, just like our expanded panel, which is probably our kind of an entry level, if you will,
Right.
panel. The expanded panel, it checks your fasting glucose, it checks your hemoglobin A1C, and it checks your fasting insulin along with your triglycerides.
Right.
We've kind of covered the bases.
Right.
And when you do that and you got that much information, now you know what you're dealing with.
Right.
Because if you leave out something like that, like for instance, if they just do your fasting sugar, like on a metabolic panel, and they say, oh, you're fine because the sugar's not like over 130 or something like that, you're not diabetic. You don't know because your A1C, I've had people come in and their fasting sugar will be 110, and which is, it's a little high, but it's not bad, but their A1C is 8. They're diabetic right there.
Right, so you can't go just by fasting sugar. So our labs do that. At the same time, it checks magnesium. Magnesium is so important in blood sugar control. It's used in like 300 different processes in the body. And magnesium is checked on the labs as well. So is B12 and folate and vitamin D, and it does your thyroid. It does a lot, and that's our expanded panel. That's before we start adding things to it.
That's kind of an entry level.
That's our entry level.
Because it takes that much to know exactly what you're, what's wrong with you, or what's going wrong. Let's put it that way. Things that haven't really blown up yet, maybe, but they're blowing up. And they're blowing it quietly, so you don't really pay attention to it, and all of a sudden, boom, something hits you. And so that's the reason we do something like that, because people say, well, that's a lot of lab work. Yeah, it is. And there's a lot more stuff a lot more questions I'd have for you. And we can do those, and get into the cardiovascular add-ons that we do there, which is your inflammatory markers.
Actually, for diabetics, you really are better off with our expanded cardiac panel because diabetes increases the risk of heart disease so much.
Huge.
And so you do see a huge increase in cardiovascular problems in the diabetic population. So really that's the panel that you really should be doing is probably the expanded cardiac panel if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic.
Or even think you might be.
Anybody over 50, I say.
Yeah.
Now, if you're younger and diabetic, you do it younger.
Actually, they're saying,
or if you have heart disease in your family.
The researchers have moved that 50 down to 45.
Yeah.
Well, they say now 45 and above, you need to really start checking.
Because of the lifestyle that people are living nowadays. I mean,
we're seeing health problems younger and younger.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but it's true. So you really want to start younger than that to start doing some prevention. But we actually have 20-year-olds come in and do all the cardiac stuff, which is smart because you see some of the genetic stuff that could be in the family.
Right.
And it might not be affecting you yet, but you know what, if it's coming, you can change it. That's the thing, is we talk about prevention a lot. And you want to prevent.
And what can happen if you don't?
Exactly.
Right.
What can happen if you don't?
It's a known fact, and this is directly from the diabetes. If you go to diabetes.org or whatever it is, if you go look at that, if you're diabetic, your health care costs are going to be about 2.3 times what the average person would be that's not diabetic. So just think about that.
You're going to end up dealing with things like neuropathy?
Well, you can deal with that. You're going to deal with eye problems, heart problems, kidney problems, and so
weight problems.
Weight problems, the whole thing. So, when you start looking at what's it going to, what is this consequence of this? Well, the consequence is it's going to cost you a lot of money as you age.
And fatty liver is definitely caused by a lot of this insulin resistance out there.
And
so that's the main reason. It's the fastest growing problem in the country, and it's caused because of insulin resistance.
Yeah.
All right. Our time's about up here. Next week we're talking about aging and healthy skin.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go.
That ought to be interesting.
Without having to go get all those injections and stuff.
Right.
Yep, stuff you can do naturally.
There you go. All right. Anyway, thank you for joining us this morning for this morning's live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. You can find more information, of course, now on YouTube, where they have their own YouTube channel. Go on and subscribe.
And our special now is running until Saturday, not Sunday, just to let y'all know.
Okay. Well, you're not open on Sunday anyway.
All right.
Anyway, have yourself a wonderful week. Wrap up, and hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week.
For more information on highlighting your business and services on Healthy Living South Mississippi, contact Jim Tabor at 896-1313.